We're making a laundry bag. The pattern is by Jan Marie Ball from Aussie Hero Quilts and Laundry Bags. I've printed out my instructions. I have my outside fabric, my lining fabric, and my cord channel fabric. Our first step will be to sew side seams. So I am using a large rectangle which I'm folding in half, and I'm going to sew down one side and across the bottom, but we'll show you that at the machine. My fabric is now right sides together, so I'm going to sew down this side and along the bottom. Then I'm going to do the same with the lining fabric, but there's one thing we'll remember, and I'll get to that. Now the instructions tell us to use a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So on my machine you can see the markings 3/8 and 5/8. It's the line in between, which would be 4/8, which is 1/2 inch. So I've lined my seam allowance up with the 4/8 of an inch mark and securing stitches. I will sew down the side. So I've reached the corner, changed direction, and now sew straight along the bottom of the outer fabric. Now normally with a bag that we're making like this, where we have a corner, we would trim off the corner at 45 degrees to reduce the bulk when we turn it inside. Jan Marie's asked not to do this, which can weaken that corner. We want these bags to be as strong as possible, so leave your corner there. It will not affect the functioning of the bag as a laundry bag. So that is the outer bag, and we'll get onto the lining next. So once again I have my lining fabric right sides together, and I'm going to sew down the side, pivot at the corner, and then I'm going to sew to the middle, but I'm going to leave myself a gap in the middle of the bottom of the bag. So to remind yourself not to sew all the way across, until you're used to it, use some pins and just mark yourself a space. You want to sew along to here, do some reinforcing stitches, then bring your fabric to and start again here, reinforcing stitches, and then sew the rest of the way. So I'm just going to trim those threads so they don't become a pulling hazard. And you can see that I have left a gap opening in the bottom of my bag. Now, next step is to turn this bag the right way out. This is my cord channel fabric. So what we need to do now, I've pressed this at the machine, but you don't have to but it is easier if you do press it, is at each short end, fold it over twice. And then we want to stitch a number of times on that folded over bit so that it's all held. This is the outside, or the part of the cord channel where the cord comes out, so we want it to be pretty strong. threads out of the way. So I'm sewing, I'll show you at the end, down each side and then once down the middle. I'm trimming off all my threads. So if I turn that over, you can see the darker line of stitching. There's 3 rows of stitching there. Do the same for the other end. Then go back to the ironing board and fold it in half lengthwise, matching those raw edges, and press along so that you've got a nice secure fold, and we'll move on to the next step. Maybe a little bit, the next step may be a little bit challenging to show you just with my field of view. The lining fabric, we're going to put right sides together inside the outer fabric, which is still wrong side out. You may find it easier at this point, now that it's mostly inside, to lift it off the table and give it a shake elsewhere. Okay, so my lining fabric, this is the right side, is matching the right side of my outer fabric. Okay. Now take your channel fabric and fold it in half lengthways. What we want to do is find, so we're matching this end and we're finding the center at the other end. You can just put a pin in that so that you know where it is. Excellent. Then on our bag, this is the side with the seam. I'm going to do the same thing and find the opposite edge, and I'm going to put this inside matching that. So I might just put a pin there as well. Like so. Oh, I've caught the lining. Okay. Now I want to try and have this so that my cactus is upright on the outside. Yes, that looks correct. So match those 2 pins and just use one of them to hold it in place. All right. Now with your lining fabric, which will also have a center, if I can get my finger in there, open that out, and we have outer fabric, 2 layers of our cord channel, and then our lining fabric, and we are aligning all 4 raw edges. Okay, outer fabric, 2 layers of cord channel fabric, lining fabric, aligning all 4 raw edges, and then pinning. And do that all the way around. I'll do one side and show you what happens. So outer fabric, both pieces of cord channel, lining. So when you get the other side of the lining out of the way, when you get to the other side, and you have your outer fabric and then your cord channel fabric, and it doesn't reach all the way, that's right. That's what we want. We need to have an opening for the cord to come out so that that cord channel can actually do its job. Okay, so my two seams of my outer fabric and my lining fabric are matching, but my cord channel fabric finishes here. That's almost an inch, and that is correct. I'm going to go around and pin the other side, and then we're going to sew all the way around. I have taken my arm off my machine so that it's now a free arm, which you may find a bit easier when sewing circular items. We're back to using our 1/2 inch seam allowance, and I have my threads held, and we're just going to sew all the way around. Now I'm not securing my stitches at the start because we're going to come back over the top of them, and you will notice when you hit your cord channel fabric here, because you'll notice there's a bit of extra thickness, just go slowly. Taking out the pins as you go and making sure your raw edges are all still aligned. And I'll see you at the other side. Now that I'm at the edge, I am going to do some reinforcing stitches here, and then we are done sewing around the top. We're almost done. So you're probably thinking, right, we're all inside out, how are we going to make this work? Well, remember that opening we left in the lining? That's where this comes into play. So pull your lining out. Now, if you reach your hand all the way in and down to the bottom of the outer bag or a corner, and I'm grabbing this corner, so I'm going to poke it through, and I've got hold of it inside. Now, when you're turning something inside out, the best way to do it is to twist, like you would a towel if you're going to flick someone with it, because you end up making it narrower. So my hand is twisting inside, and then you can pull the rest of it over, but majority of it is through, which means you're not putting any stress on the stitches that you put, where you left the hole. And there we go, we're now through to the right side. So now we need to find that hole again and put those seams together nicely. Tuck the seam allowances inside. I'm going to go straight to the machine and sew between here and here, very close to the edge. It's not going to be invisible, but it's inside the laundry bag, so no one's really going to see it. Alright, show you in the bolder thread. There you go, you can see it's just sitting there. Once these guys are using these bags, you won't see it. Alright, now poke this lining inside the bag, and then once again, it'll be easier if you grab hold of your cord channel, get rid of a couple of threads there, and shake it off the table. And then you have your lining inside, lovely cord channel with an opening for your cord. So our next step is to top stitch around the edge, which will hold it all secure. I'm starting my top stitching on this white piece of the pattern because I'm using white thread in the top, so it's going to be quite visible on these darker colours. And I have aligned my foot so that the inside of this part of it is going to run along here, which means I'm definitely catching my 1/2 inch seam allowance inside. And you'll notice that's where my gap is. We're going to sew all the way around. Now you do need to make sure that your lining is pushed down and your outer bag fabric as well, so that you're not creating pleats and puckers underneath. So sew a little bit, stop and readjust it, and then sew a bit more. If you have a needle down function on your machine, this is the perfect time to use it. So I'm smoothing the inside of the lining and the outside to make sure it's all sitting smoothly. And that's it. Meet you around the other side. So there you have a laundry bag. You can see my top stitching, our cord channel, lining and outer. So what we need to do now is put some cord through it. I'm just using this twill tape that I had. A thicker cord is probably better and recommended. If you've got an old nappy pin, these are ideal for threading because they've got that larger head. It makes it really easy. Put it through on the pin twice, just gives you a bit more strength, and it means you're not going to break your ribbon if you're using ribbon. Good tip for anything. So making sure I stay in camera. If you poke it through, and then you can feel the head here, and push the fabric onto the pin and then pull through. And you just keep doing that all the way around. But handy tip, before you get too far, I would get the end of the other end of your cord or ribbon and pin it to your fabric so that you can't accidentally pull it all the way through, which sort of means you have to start again. So working our way around the top of the bag. Comes out the other side. And you may find, depending on how hard you've pulled it, it's gotten caught in the twist of the safety pin. Just gently ease it out of that. Undo your pin. Now these two ends I'm going to knot together so that they can't be lost in the bag either. There you go. Smoothing out. So I have the knot here, which can be easily found and pulled tight if the bag was full. And there you have it. One laundry bag. Have fun making your own.